the top 5 regrets of the dying. So I'm basically gonna do a summary. It was such a fascinating book. Basically, there's the top 5 regrets of the dying. The whole story is written in the perspective of someone, the author, obviously, but I'm not good at this. She at one point became an in-house nurse, 24-hour nurse, 24-hour care. Not even necessarily 24 hours, but she was a home nurse at times. This wasn't her initial job. She did some other stuff. She was kind of a nomad. She traveled. She went around the world. This just happened to be an industry she ended up in accidentally. And so she ended up caring for these elderly people basically until they passed away. To me, I would find that to be a slightly traumatic job. Getting to know these people, having these conversations, living with them, caring with them for days on end. Basically, that's what she did. She lived and became, in certain situations, probably some of these people's best friends, at least to their near death. And she got to pick their brain because at times there's not much else you can do besides have conversations and learn. And she learned about so many different people's lives, saw their perspectives, dealt with so many different scenarios that she would have never have guessed she would have ended up in. And I think it ended up changing her life, but it also, down the road, ended up changing many after she wrote the article about it and then created this book. So, regret number 1. I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not a life others expected of me. An amazing story from some of the people she took care of, and the sense of just realizing that their situation, their past, they ended up not being able to do what they wanted. And they wasted time living in a situation where they were worried about other people's expectations and didn't take that leap. And I think the scenario that she first heard this from was from a woman that regretted not necessarily divorcing her husband because in their generation it was looked upon as very negative for divorce, and her husband had basically ruined her life to an extent, and even her kids agreed, and she finally got freedom when he ended up in a nursing home. Sadly, shortly after he was in the nursing home, when she was alone and wanted some freedom and was going to try to travel and do some of the stuff she's always wanted to do, she got diagnosed with lung cancer. She didn't smoke. Her husband loved to smoke in the house. So it basically had the consequence of taking her life and taking away that freedom she had always wanted, and she regretted not taking that jump to do what she truly found was her true calling in her heart instead of falling into what people expected of her. Regret number 2, I wish I didn't work so hard. This one, pretty self-explanatory. This was from a man that she took care of that decided that he wanted to focus on his career. He wanted to focus on basically status. And in all reality, it took away from his chance to spend time with his wife. His wife wanted him to retire in his scenario, and she begged him for years, and he kept pushing it off until finally he was like, next year, I'll finally retire. You really want to do this? I'm sorry I've put you off so long. And sadly, she ended up terminally ill and passing away shortly after. And he technically didn't retire until it was to take care of his wife, being the catalyst. And sadly, most of his retirement was spent alone after his wife had passed away. And he regretted that he focused on his work, not even necessarily for the money, but for the status and the way it made him feel, instead of focusing on his real life and his family and his wife. And he regretted not doing that because he never was able to spend the time and gave his wife what she truly wanted to do with her husband at such as they aged together. And he regretted not doing that and just falling into line with work. Regret number 3. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. If I remember correctly, the reason this was brought up in the book was from someone that hadn't necessarily shown their true colors and their feelings towards their kids. And their kids never fully understand who their father was. And he regretted not necessarily allowing them in to him as a person. And it was very sad because she had encouraged him at the time to sit down and talk to his children and really tell them how he felt. But in his eyes, it was just too late, and there was no point to make those changes now because he's so close to death. And sadly, that was one of his biggest regrets, was just never expressing his true feelings to his children and letting them understand how they truly, like, what they truly meant to him and how proud he was, and how much he loved them in certain situations. Some of these stories were extremely sad. I can't deny that some of these were almost, for some people, definitely would have been tearjerkers, but some of the stories, it did hit me in the heartstrings 100%, and it was a very, very sad story. Regret number 4 was, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. So this one was of an elderly woman that ended up in a nursing home, and she regretted not staying in touch with her friends because of letting life get in the way and losing contact with people that truly knew who she was, instead dealing with people that don't totally know her real personality and who she truly is. I think for the most part I do okay on this. I don't necessarily have a lot of friends to stay in contact with, but I try my best, and I completely understand this woman's reasoning behind this, because I think staying in touch with friends and family, someone that truly knows who you are, someone you spend a lot of time with, loyalty, it's very important to surround yourself with loving friends and family, especially as you age and in times of need, and death is definitely one of those times. And then last but not least, regret number 5 was, I wish that I had let myself be happier. Some of this was from a story of a woman that never truly let herself be happy, and part of that was because of the expectation that she was not good enough and that she was a disappointment to her own family. And so she had always regretted, felt like she had to work harder, and didn't understand why other people could be happy. When in all reality, to an extent, happiness is a thought and a feeling. The happiness at one point is a perspective in your scenario, and that you can make yourself happier physically and mentally just by changing the way you look at things and your thoughts themselves. And that you should allow yourself to be happy and be grateful and live in the moment, not necessarily be so hard on yourself and tear yourself down all the time. Sometimes it is nice to give yourself a little tough love and push yourself, but at the same time, you should be very open to yourself, let alone other people, and be happy and really enjoy life while you have it. It was an amazing book, and I do recommend it to basically anyone. The breakdown and the stories, it really gives you an amazing connection, but I think these 5 lessons could possibly change someone's aspects on life, and especially if you really, really understand them and get into it, it can change how you live your life, hopefully that you don't have regrets when you get older. So it was an awesome book, and I recommend anyone to read it.